Hey, Goba here. A viewer suggested this video a bit ago, and with some time on my hands and a slower patch, I think it's time I do it. Today we'll be checking out signature Lycones and which ones have the most value to pull right now. If you're watching a few months in the future, some things may be outdated, which kinda sucks, but maybe I'll do an updated version of this at the end of every yearly version. Let me know if you guys want that, and let me know below if you want a character and maybe an Eidolon version of this video. Like and sub for more HSR guide content, and before we start, here is today's sponsor. Hey, Goba here, real quick to talk about today's sponsor, Reverse 1999, an awesome gacha game I know a lot of my viewers love. Right now is an amazing time to get into the game, as Reverse 1999 is having a major collaboration with none other than the Assassin's Creed franchise, and it is out right now. They are collabing with AC2 and Odyssey, which means we are getting a playable Cassandra and Alexios, but also the fan favorite Ezio. Not only that, but the game will be getting exclusive AC storylines and thematic skins, my favorite being Apple getting an Apple of Eden skin. And with a big collab comes insane rewards, like Alexios being completely free, you being able to earn 40 pulls for free, and they even give you a purchasable monthly pass for free. So you can set up your account real nice and get ready for the upcoming anniversary this year, which is sure to give even more juicy content and rewards. So download now using my link below and enjoy the collab. So let's begin with the Lycone ratings. I think the best way I can do this is separate Lycones into categories or paths, because putting all Lycones together doesn't make much sense. Starting with supportive Lycones, so all the Harmony signatures as well as some Nihility signatures, and let's go in release order. Incessant Rain was our very first one, made for Silverwolf, offering a bunch of stats for her, but also 12% vulnerability for the team. The uptime, however, is bad. It can be RNG in case of AoE abilities, and the other effects are not that great. This cone is an absolute skip. Many cones outclass it on Silverwolf, and Tutorial was better on her release anyway. No other unit even wants it, and I wish it got buffed. The next one had to wait all the way until 1.6 with Past Self in Mirror. We get Break Effect, Ally Damage percent on ult, SP Regeneration, and even Energy. Now, I didn't think it was that crazy on release thanks to Memories of the Past, and it still isn't that crazy. The Break Effect is nice for building her, but not mandatory. The damage percent is nice, but not that high, and not even useful for break teams. The SP is really nice in some teams, and the energy must be played around, but can create some great rotations. This cone is mostly used on Raw Mei, but can be used for alternative builds and other supports when fully planning around it. I'd say it's good, but not necessary for Raw Mei, and more of a luxury pull. Sparkle's cone just after came with a big crit damage buff and then a bunch of team-wide crit value. Now, back in the day, these kind of buffs were highly sought after, but we get so many crit buffs these days that make this effect much weaker. Even on release, we knew Dance 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 was strong on Sparkle if you hit breakpoints with it, and there are so many cones with utility that I'd rather pull over this. It isn't even too universal, and Sunday's Light Cone is just nice on Sparkle as well now. Next, we have Flowing Nightglow, which is still really nice in my opinion. We get a stacking energy regen effect, a buff to the wearer, and then a team-wide damage buff. Now, this is pretty Robin pilled, but since Robin is still top tier and this is an awesome upgrade for her, I definitely rate it over a cone like Sparkles. Remember, if you have specifically like an S3 Bronya cone, you don't need to replace it with this, but the ratings here are on how impactful the cones are for an average account. 2.4 then had Jiaocho with his monster-like cone for Dot. 60% effect hit rate, the biggest increase we have had so far, and then up to a 24% universal vulnerability, not even break or dot specific. As said on release, this cone is just going to be a really powerful option for any supportive or sub-DPS unit with a dot in their kit. Well, it is the best on Jiaocho if you use him, it is a really high option on Kafka since she is more supportive now, it is amazing on Black Swan because Triple Dot has a lot of various damage dealers, and it is even a decent option on the upcoming High Sealants because of Triple Dot again. Even if you don't run Triple Dot, the effect hit rate is such a big stat injection, and 24% vulnerability is still really strong. It's a great pull for many units if you invest into Dot or want to spice up your Jiaocho. Fugue next with a very similar light cone. 60% break effect instead, and then up to a 36% break vulnerability, which is easily stacked on Fugue specifically. Now this isn't instant, but once you do break both bars with Fugue, it is just going to buff up your super break damage a ton. It is a decent pull for Fugue, but not mandatory, as she can use other supportive Nihility cones post-release, like Cypher's Cone, Battle Pass Cone, or even the classic Resolution. Since it's Fugue specific with the break effect and double stack condition, I don't rate this that highly. Sunday came out in the same patch with a very strong Lycone and one of the best in the game in my opinion. You get energy after skills and ults, stacking damage percent for your ability target, and then SP generation. It is specific to single target buffers, but we have a few. It is absolutely the best for Sunday and elevates him to what most people hype him up about, and it is the best for Bronya and Tingyun if not doing dance specific runs. Sparkle also really likes this cone, as with a Quid Pro Quo proc, it can enable a 2-turn ult. That alongside the SP regeneration of this cone makes it the most SP positive harmony you can get. One of the best icons you can get, but specifically if you run hypercarry teams. Next we have If Time Were a Flower. I think this cone is underrated because of how powerful dance spam on Tribby is sometimes, but we get a massive crit damage buff, energy all day every day for Tribby, and then a team-wide crit damage buff. This is the same as Sparkle's in crit value, but Tribby doesn't offer any crit damage herself, so it is less diluted, and then it gives other bonuses as well. It lets Tribby run HP rope and also boasts a very high base HP, so this makes Tribby's DPS go up a ton and she can contribute a lot already. Some MOC runs went better over Dance with this cone because it offered more damage, and Dance can sometimes just not do anything for your team. Anyway, I think if you have an S5 Dance you can skip this, especially for pure fiction, but I still like it, and it can also be used on Robin for fun low AV runs. And then 3.3 was truly a crazy patch for Lycones, and in this category we'll see Cyphers. An 18% speed buff is just insane, as it is one of the rarest stats, and it is pretty powerful in supportive units. Then you can get up to a 24% def reduction. If these two things were the only part of the cone, it would still be insane, but then you get 3 extra benefits. First, it lasts 2 turns, and then it can be reapplied, making it pretty much permanent once applied, but also stacking multiple times, for example for Acheron's ult generation. But then, it is also applied to all enemies even if your attack was a single target. So even in AoE with a random basic attack, the whole enemy field can get 24% def reduction. It is top tier on every Nihility support and is a very good pull. So for supportive Lycones, i.e. Harmony and Nihility support ones, here are my ratings. Sundays and Cyphers are absolutely at the top with big power and decent or very high universality. The units they shine on are also top tier, which boosts their rating even more so. Then we have Jiaoqiu's, Rome's, Robin's, Fugues, and Tribby's all together. They are mostly luxury pulls, but all on great or top tier units, and some of them have some really nice uses. For example, you can abuse Dance, but sometimes the damage of Tribby's is excellent in MOC. And you can just use memories on Rome, but sometimes you want that SP. Jiaoqiu's is really good on all limited dot units and Jiaoqiu himself, but because it is mostly dot centric, and the signatures of the dot units are better to pull, I can't really rate it higher. Then finally, I'd rate Sparkle's cone below with Silverwolf's. Sparkle's can technically go above Silverwolf since it is still okay, but they are both in the skip category for me. Next, let's go look at Sustain Light Cones. This will be quick as we don't really get that many. First off, the Beautiful Watcher unfortunately released with a weird cone. We get attack percent, 3 energy on enemies hit per attack up to 9 energy, and a speed buff on ulting. The effects aren't very universal for abundance units, and sometimes the speed can come at a bad time and ruin your speed tuning. If you don't remember it is there, it happens a lot. Even on release back in the we don't know anything period of HSR, this cone was known to not be that excellent. It creates the watch's best energy rotation, but we can work around that with a bunch of other options, and there are so many good utility cones that just make this worthless for the watcher. A newer use case of this cone is Lingsha, but she doesn't want it that bad either. Fushwan's light cone then showed that they want to give some damage amp to sustain cones. Unfortunately, it's with 9% damage, which is just awful. Though it does give a bunch of stats to Fushuan, as well as a very high quality of life benefit with HP restore on wave start. If you use Fushuan, this is a nice pull, but I still think it's luxury and not necessary, which is confirmed by usage statistics in endgame. Fushuan also isn't top tier even if she sustains fine, which nerfs the rating. Huohuo is in the same boat as Fushuan's, and because she is abundance, it is even less useful. Fushuan has barely any other options, but Huohuo has plenty. This cone gives energy and some emergency healing, but then a terribly small attack buff. I'd rather use other cones like Shared Feeling, Quid Pro Quo, the new Battle Pass cone, etc. And if you need energy, Poststopper S4 gives more. Aventurine in 2.1 was a real show of damage amp on sustain cones. Now we get 10% universal vulnerability on follow-ups. It also gives a really big stat increase to Aventurine with a high base defense and def percent and crit damage. On release, it was crazy because Aventurine could do a bunch of nice sub DPS damage, but these days it is much less useful. And with enemies getting stronger, some Aventurines might need to get tankier instead. The next sustain was in 2.5 with Linkshire, and her cone gives 60% break effect as well as up to an 18% universal vulnerability. Now this isn't subject to breaking or inflicting dots, all you gotta do is attack the enemies with your ult. Like Aventurine, Linkshire just works in a bunch of teams. But again, Abundance has a bunch of utility options, so it's just a nice luxury pool for damage amplification for your team. And finally, we have none other than Hyacinth's Light Cone. This is for the Remembrance path, but because of how this path and this cone works, it is still useful on supportive Remembrance units. You get 18% speed, then a team-wide HP drain on basic skill or ult, then some damage from the wearer's Memory Sprite, and then an 18% vulnerability on all enemies for 2 turns after a Memory Sprite skill. Safe to say this cone is just insane. It offers a bunch of stats, a bunch of utility for Castoris, Blade, and Jinglu teams, and then just team-wide damage amp if you don't even care for the rest. Oh, and some damage. It's a top tier pool for the best sustain in the game, as well as one of the best supports in the game who is also free. So for the rankings, Hyacinth is absolutely at the top alone. It's then hard to rate the rest. I'm even going to put a gap in the tiers because Hyacinth is just so much more useful than the others. I'd then rate them all pretty similarly, but because Aventurines and Linkshire's offer better amp and offer better sustains in general, I'd say they take the edge. The Watchers has uses with Linkshire, but not good enough, and the other two are not necessary pulls. Maybe you could even drop Warhorse below. Now the final part is probably the hardest, DPS cones. The way I'm going to try doing this is showing the ranking first and then explaining why, or else we'll be stuck here for 30 minutes. Remember, this is just a list of PNGs I've assembled from my testing, calculations, and then looking at global clear statistics. And I just want to help you guys spend your pools as efficiently as possible. If you want to go for your favorite character, go for it. And if you think something should be higher, that's okay. But if you want value, then I hope this helps. So I've organized them into massive or great upgrades, and then for top tier or great DPS, with top tier and great DPS just being based off of general rankings and clear speeds. So massive upgrades being stuff like Finance or Acrons that have kit mechanics buried into the light cone. Great upgrade being mostly static cones and not truly necessary for a character to perform. If they work on multiple good DPS, then I've also let them be in the tier. For example, Miday's cone is massive for him and he is still really good, but then it is also top tier on Jinglu and second best on Blade. And then we have a skip tier at the bottom. It doesn't mean the cones or characters are necessarily bad, but I just don't feel they have as much value as the others. So in the top tier we have Finan, Miday, Hycelians, and Castoris cones. They are all monstrous upgrades for their respective DPS characters. Finance gives so much power and shortens his fixed AV, which is really necessary sometimes, like in Pure Fiction. And Castoris is just such a massive upgrade. We still don't have an option that close to it outside of buying 5 battle passes. My Days offers extra HP consumption and just some insane stats in general. But another reason it is up here is because it is top tier on 2 other decent DPS with Qinglu and Blade. I then put Hycelians' cone here, firstly because it is 25 to 30% over Eyes of the Prey on her. Now, you can use Black Swan Signature or Jiao Shou's, but this is still really big for damage, and also offers help in building speed for the whole team. It is also very good on E1 Black Swan. In the next tier, we have Black Swan's Light Cone. I put this here since Dot is having a comeback, and Swan with Kafka Hycelians performs very, very well. But also, if you do have E1 Black Swan, it is then Hycelians' best Light Cone in Triple Dot, as Black Swan can wear Hycelians' Light Cone instead, and apply the team-wide speed and dot vulnerability. Then the Herta and Saber's cone are also here, both top tier DPS. These have some nice utility, but in their best teams you hopefully don't need it. And then so, without said utility, the damage increase they get over free-to-play friendly options is not as crazy as for example someone like Castoris. Saber's one could go up though. I then put Anaxes here. He is one of the best DPS in the game right now, but his cone is just not that crazy compared to the rest. He got a free event cone on his release that works absolutely fine in most cases, and this cone is still nice if you want it, but he slaps without it like the boss he is. Aglaia likewise is still really good, but her cone is not necessary. The speed after testing was shown to not be needed unless you wanted to run a double Sunday speed setup, which didn't even come out on top. She can use the Battle Pass cone just fine, and even a 3-star cone really well. If she has E1 or high battery comp, she can use the 3-star cone even better than calcs suggest. The next tier is massive upgrades for weaker performing DPS. They can still clear fine or sometimes pop off like Fei Xiao, but they are statistically weaker than options above on average. Their cones however are massive upgrades. Here we have Acheron, Yunli, Rapper, and Fei Xiao. Acheron we know just really likes this cone because of its debuff application for more ultimates in the long run, alongside a big pure damage increase. Yunli's cone literally offers aggro, which is a massive boon that is hard to truly calculate. Then she also gets some insane buffs on top. The calculated power of this cone can get to some monstrous heights when assuming specific enemy scenarios, like single target bosses that don't attack much. Then, Rapper's Cone offers Advanced Forward, which is just so strong for the Break archetype. I've also heard of people using it on other units for some fun. I also put Fei Xiao's cone here. It is actually mostly a static cone and doesn't hide any kit mechanic, but because of how big the damage increase can be, I thought I'd put it here. It is all about her ult damage, and so in some fights like AS that give you a ton of ults, it can even be more powerful than originally calculated. She also likes Cypher, who can wear Death Shred cones, so you potentially get even more of an increase. Then we have great upgrades for great DPS. I have Boohill and Firefly here as they get decent boost from their cones. They are also part of the Break archetype, which means they just have fewer options in general than other archetypes. Like, do you have Shadowed by Night at S5 for Boohill? I also put Topaz's cone here. She's probably the weirdest one as she has supportive power on this cone, but since it can be used on Marza and March 7th Hunt and Topaz all as their best cones, and then also be used as an OK DPS option on Phase Shout and Dr. Ratio, I think it's still good. These units aren't used that much outside of Phase Shout anymore, so I don't think it's that great of a pull, but yeah. And in the skip pile, we have older DPS, or cones that just aren't needed even on great or even top tier characters. For some outliers, first, Blade is now great again, but we have solid free-to-play options, and Miday's cone would be a more universal pull, even if it is slightly worse than his signature on him specifically. Archer is a top tier DPS, but his cone is pretty underwhelming. Its power is barely an improvement over Stellar C, and all it is offering over raw stats is the comfort of not having to build around Stellar C's conditional crit rate. It could maybe go in the great upgrade for a top tier DPS section if considering that on top of the damage increase, but without it, it's not that strong. If you have any suggestions, let me know below, but remember to be nice to each other. I will be smiting any toxic beings I see. And again, if you want that character or idol on ranking, let me know below as well. Thanks to my Epic YouTube members, thanks for watching, and have a good day.